Breaking right now on Morning News Now, former Prince Andrew under arrest. The ex-royal taken into custody early this morning amid growing scrutiny over his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. More on his arrest, the allegations, and what could come next. Also, new developments in day 19 of the search for Nancy Guthrie. Investigators now zeroing in on partial DNA found in Guthrie's home. They're also working to recover more video from surveillance cameras from the night she went missing. We'll have an update from Tucson. Plus, tragedy on the slopes. Several skiers found dead after a massive avalanche near Lake Tahoe. And in Oklahoma, wildfires forcing entire neighborhoods to evacuate. We're tracking the conditions. And big wins for Team USA at the Winter Olympics. The men's hockey team moving on to the semifinals after an overtime thriller against Sweden. And she's golden once again. We're going to talk to star skier Mikaela Shiffrin, who's back on top after an 8-year medal drought. Good morning. Good to have you with us on a busy news morning. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is on assignment. We begin with some major breaking news out of the United Kingdom. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, the former British prince, was arrested this morning on his 66th birthday. He's the first senior royal in modern history to be detained by police. In a statement, police said, quote, as part of the investigation, we have today arrested a man in his 60s from Norfolk on suspicion of misconduct in public office and are carrying out searches at addresses in Berkshire and Norfolk. The man remains in police custody at this time. We will not be naming the arrested man as per national guidance. To be clear, not naming someone who's arrested is standard practice for UK police. Andrew has been caught up in the scandal surrounding the Jeffrey Epstein files, but he has consistently denied any wrongdoing. Let's get right to NBC News reporter Matt Bodner, who joins us now with the latest on this. So, Matt, it looks like this arrest is linked to an investigation by British police. It's into Andrew's actions and ties to Epstein when he was a UK trade envoy. Tell us more about that. What are we hearing from authorities about this and just the arrest itself?
Thank you, Joe. Well, for the moment, this is developing in the past hour or so. The police are being rather tight-lipped about it. They put out that statement that you mentioned. They also said that they will provide updates as appropriate. And then there's this whole matter of British police not releasing suspect names. This came out because local news photographers saw police arriving this morning at Andrew's residence. The police also said that they're conducting searches at homes in Berkshire and Norfolk. And if found guilty of this charge of misconduct in public office, that actually can result in a maximum sentence of life imprisonment under UK law. Now, of course, this development comes on the heels of weeks of new revelations concerning the former royal's relationship, also his activities with Jeffrey Epstein, and the royal family itself has been under immense pressure from both the public as well as politicians over Andrew's ties to Epstein, and already the former royal had been stripped of his titles and perks. Earlier this month, however, Thames Valley Police did say that it was working with relevant authorities to determine whether or not a fuller investigation was necessary, was warranted, and it looks like that's the case.
The royal family so far, Matt, has not released a statement, but we know just before the arrest, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer was speaking to the BBC about Andrew, whether he should volunteer to speak to police. He was also asked whether Andrew should testify here in America to Congress about Epstein. What did he have to say at that time?
Well, that's right. So Starmer did ultimately decline to answer that question on Congress. He did say, quote, nobody is above the law, and that this principle was, quote, very important, has to apply in this case as in the same way it would in any other case. As for whether or not Andrew should volunteer himself to UK police, Starmer said that this was a matter for the police, who will conduct their own independent investigations, though he did also say that if Parliament wanted to get involved, he, quote, wouldn't stand in the way.
Matt, we're also hearing from the family of the late Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's victims, who appeared in this photo here with Andrew. What are they saying this morning?
So in a statement they released this morning, the Giuffre family said that the news lifted their broken hearts. Quote, on behalf of our sister, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, we extend our gratitude to the Thames Valley Police for the investigation and arrest of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. He was never a prince. For survivors everywhere, Virginia did this for you. Joe.
All right, Matt, breaking news this morning. Thank you so much. To Arizona now, the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie is entering day 19. The search continues this morning for the mother of our NBC News colleague, Savannah Guthrie. Investigators are now turning to genetic genealogy, hoping to identify a partial DNA sample that was found at Nancy's home. The Pima County Sheriff hasn't said specifically where that DNA was found, but he believes it could belong to whoever is behind Nancy's abduction. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz joins us now from Tucson with the latest. Liz, good morning.
Well, hey there. Good morning. As the search continues, we are learning more about some of the tactics that are being used by investigators to find the suspect. We are learning more, for instance, about the canvassing of these gun stores here in Tucson. NBC News has now spoken to 2 different gun store owners who say that investigators showed up at their store with a list about 3 to 4 pages long of names and photos of possible people of interest connected to this Nancy Guthrie investigation. One of those owners says that all of the photos were of young to middle-aged men, and it didn't seem like either of those owners believed that they had sold a gun to anybody on that list. We're also learning more about how investigators are going to try and use genetic genealogy to identify that unknown DNA that was found at the home and perhaps then identify the suspect. Forensic experts tell us that if that DNA is in fact the suspects, it's only a matter of time before they will be identified using this technology, which essentially uses publicly available DNA data banks to build a family tree of someone and then trace back to a particular person or suspect. This is the same technology that you probably remember was used to find the Golden State Killer and more recently than the University of Idaho murderer Brian Kohberger. Lastly, we are now hearing from 2 officials familiar with the matter who say that since Nancy went missing, law enforcement has been in touch with officials on both sides of the border. Tucson is just about 70 miles away from the U.S.-Mexico border. The sheriff has maintained from the beginning that they have no evidence to say or to prove or show that Nancy would have been taken to Mexico. There's no reason to believe that, just like there's no reason to know that he said she was taken to Flagstaff, is essentially what he told us. But he did say that they do have exit and entry data from the border, and he does believe that that is being looked at as well. Back to you.
All right, Liz Kreutz, thank you. We do want to get to some political headlines ahead of President Trump's State of the Union address next week. At least 12 Democratic lawmakers are planning to boycott the speech at the U.S. Capitol next Tuesday. Instead, this group of progressive lawmakers and other activists say they'll host what they're calling a People's State of the Union rally on the National Mall. This would be counter-programming to President Trump's speech, sending a message they reject his second-term agenda. NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen joins us now with more. John, good morning. It's custom for, a lawmaker from the president's opposing party to deliver that rebuttal right after the State of the Union. But during President Trump's joint address to Congress last year, we saw Democrats find all sorts of ways to protest the president. Literally during the speech in the chamber, Congressman Al Green of Texas was actually removed after shouting at Mr. Trump. He was later censured. Should we expect anything like that in the chamber this year? And then just which lawmakers are planning to skip out on it altogether?
I don't want to presume, Joe, that people will behave poorly in the State of the Union, but we have seen that over the course of time in a joint session, though it wasn't a State of the Union. Congressman Joe Wilson famously yelling at President Barack Obama that he was lying, and since then, decorum in the House of Representatives has broken down. I suspect you'll see some form of protest. The more traditional way to do it is to simply not applaud for the things that the president says that you don't like, but I would not be shocked if folks see an opportunity to turn themselves into big national stories and raise money for themselves. As far as the group that will not attend, so far we know a handful of senators, including Chris Murphy of Connecticut, Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, Tina Smith of Minnesota, some of the House members, particularly from the Progressive Caucus, notably Pramila Jayapal from Washington State and Greg Casar from Texas. So there will be a group that's decided rather than oppose the president from within the chamber, they'd rather do it from outside.
It does seem like we've moved well beyond the days of just not applauding at all, and that's your form of protest while you're there during the speech. Let's stay on Capitol Hill. Texas Congressman Tony Gonzalez is pushing back on some reporting from the San Antonio Express News alleging he had an affair with his staffer who died in September after setting herself on fire. Tell us more. What do we know about this woman, Regina Santos Avalos, and how is Gonzalez responding to this?
Yeah, this is such a sad story, Joe, and obviously there are details that are still to be learned here. The young woman was a staffer for the congressman. She did unfortunately take her own life in such a horrific way. The congressman has denied an affair in the past, but right now what he is doing is focusing on accusing one of his opponents in the primary, Brandon Herrera, of politicizing this. There's a multi-candidate Republican primary in that district, and on the political level, we'll have to see how this shakes out. But also, there's a very tragic human story here that I think hasn't been completely told.
Let's talk about New York. Governor Kathy Hochul announced yesterday construction on this gateway tunnel between New York and New Jersey is going to resume next week. This is after the Trump administration had cut federal funding for the project. Tell us, how did Hochul unfreeze these funds, and just how did this scenario shed some light on these continuing ongoing tensions between the Trump administration and Democratic leaders from blue states?
With the help of the federal courts, Joe, that's how Kathy Hochul unlocked these funds. A court basically said, at least temporarily, that the president could not block those funds. That appears to have prompted the White House to go ahead and release the funds, at least start releasing the funds. There's a one tranche, if you will, one sort of bucket of money that comes out now, and then there are many, many more buckets of money to be had before that project gets done. As you can imagine, building a rail tunnel between New York and New Jersey will be a long-term affair.
Yes, we'll probably be dealing with that for a while. All right, John Allen, thank you so much. A lot to cover this morning. Appreciate it. Out west, officials say a massive avalanche in California's Sierra Mountains is now the deadliest in the state's history. Rescue teams yesterday discovered the bodies of 8 backcountry skiers who were caught in that avalanche earlier this week. Officials say one more skier is still missing but presumed dead, with the recovery mission growing increasingly difficult because of those treacherous whiteout conditions. 6 others in the ski party did survive. NBC News national correspondent Morgan Chesky is covering it all from California.
Rescue crews battling brutal conditions in the high Sierra, powering through up to 8 feet of fresh snow, searching for a missing skier, now presumed dead. Their group of 15 trapped when a snowy mountainside gave way, caught in an avalanche the size of a football field. Authorities confirming while crews rescued 6 people overnight, search teams found 8 experienced skiers dead.
Someone saw the avalanche, yelled avalanche, and then it overtook them rather quickly.
Authorities say the danger isn't only from the nonstop snow and near whiteout conditions, but the fact it's falling on a weak, unstable layer, driving that avalanche risk up across a vast portion of the entire Sierra.
Officials say this group was run by Blackbird mountain guides to a popular area known as Castle Peak, the group on their final day. But just days before, Blackbird posting this video on Instagram with the caption, "Big storm incoming." The company says they are working in full coordination with authorities to support the ongoing rescue. The community here grieving.
This is devastating. It affects us all.
The avalanche threat not isolated to California. In Europe, stunning video from avalanches in Italy and Switzerland this week. A stark reminder of the sheer power and unpredictability of mountain winters. Back in California, as rescuers race to find that remaining skier, an avalanche warning now extended.
All right, our thanks to Morgan Chesky for that report. From avalanches to wildfires across Oklahoma's panhandle, fast-moving fires are burning through homes and buildings. The flames and high winds mixing together, creating fire tornadoes. And the critical fire risk continues today, while more rain lingers on the West Coast. Meteorologist Melissa McGee has your Morning News Now weather. Melissa, good morning.
And good morning, everyone. We remain unsettled out across the West Coast. New rounds of rain and heavy snow will slam California. Avalanche risk renewed across the Sierra Mountains, so we're watching that really closely. The storm system quickly races out across areas in the Rockies, and that snow will spread into this region as well tomorrow. So slick travel along I-70 and I-25. Red flag warnings are in effect for the southern plains. 9 million are at risk. Critical fire weather conditions, gusty winds, very dry air at the surface, it will elevate our fire threat here. Out across the upper Midwest, the snow and the showers will continue right across the mid-Atlantic region. Then severe showers are likely as we head across Illinois and Ohio today, with the possibility of a tornado or two. Damaging winds and hail certainly can't be ruled out either. Then tomorrow, moderate to heavy snow lifts into New England. In terms of the snowfall forecast, overall for New England, about 2 to 4 inches of snowfall across the area, but across the higher terrain, we could find anywhere from 6 to 8 inches of snow. Watching the coast very closely, the potential for a big winter storm early next week. Now, the track of this area of low pressure will determine the impact. So as we head into our Monday, the trend has been that this storm stays offshore, but of course, there's still a chance that this is a complete miss. So we'll keep you posted with that. That warmth is eroding. You can see out across the West Coast, Denver, 39 degrees. The warmth continues today in Dallas, 78 and 80 degrees in New Orleans. Now, as we head out on our Friday, it's still nice in Atlanta. Temperature is 77, but cold in Rapid City and at 29 degrees. As we head into early next week across much of the Ohio Valley, the Midwest and the Northeast, these temperatures start to cool down. 41 for Cleveland, but by Monday, we're down at 32 at the freezing mark. Richmond, Virginia, 62 degrees on your Saturday, but back to work on Monday, a high temperature of just 46. And in Boston, 35 degrees for the start of your weekend, and we'll hang out in the 30s even as we get into next week. That's a look at your national weather. Now back to you.
All right, Melissa, thank you. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg taking the stand over allegations against his social media empire and its influence on children. The landmark trial now underway. Up first after the break, closer to gold. Team USA Hockey moving on to the semifinals after an overtime thriller in Milan. We'll have all the excitement next. Stay with us. We're back with some breaking news out of South Korea. Overnight, the country's former president, Yoon Suk-yeol, was sentenced to life in prison for his role in an insurrection back in 2024. He was tried and found guilty of attempting to impose martial law in a bid to stay in power. Let's get straight to NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer with more on this. So, Janice, first just remind us what Yoon did back in 2024 that led to this guilty verdict and why he said he did it.
Joe, it was back in December 2024. Yoon Suk-yeol shocked South Korea and the world, for that matter, by declaring martial law during a televised address. The decree banned all political activities, including parliament, and imposed strict media censorship. Immediately, the military and police were deployed. There were helicopters landing at the National Assembly building to blockade it. You might remember those chaotic images of lawmakers trying to get into the National Assembly so they could vote to override Yoon's decree, with some of them scaling walls and fences to get past military forces. Yoon has always justified what he did as necessary to protect South Korea from, quote, anti-state forces, what he saw as a threat from North Korea. He was also in a complete political deadlock with his legislature, which was controlled by the opposition, and he was frustrated that he couldn't push through any of his budget matters. The martial law bid lasted 6 hours, and then Yoon ended it. But the consequences, including massive protests and all of these criminal trials, make this an historic verdict. And throughout the trial, Yoon has never apologized for what happened. Joe?
What's interesting is prosecutors actually sought the death penalty in this case. Do we know in the end why the court settled on life in prison, and do we expect Yoon to appeal then?
Yoon's lawyers are expected to appeal, and it would then be several months for the Supreme Court to consider his case. Prosecutors had asked for the death penalty given the severity of the charge, insurrection, and triggering a constitutional crisis in the country. The judge said he considered Yoon's age, he's 65, and also that the martial law attempt, while it was illegal, it didn't result in casualties or what he called a meticulously planned bloodbath. Yoon has already been convicted on 2 other charges, and the legal troubles are far from over. He faces another 6 criminal trials, including treason for allegedly sending drones into North Korea that would prompt a response to justify a declaration of martial law.
Janice, Yoon does still have some support in the country. What's some of the reaction you're hearing to the verdict there?
He does have some political support in South Korea, but it's now more of a fringe group. They're often wearing red MAGA-style baseball hats, and his support pales in comparison to the backlash that he faced. There were tens of thousands of people who protested for days to get him impeached. And for them, what he did conjured up very bitter memories of the country's dictatorship. And that's what makes this such an historic legal moment. And that he never expressed remorse in court also played a role in the judge's decision to sentence him to life in prison. This is the first time that a democratically elected leader has been convicted of trying to overthrow the very system that allowed him to rise to power. So this is a very stunning fall from grace that now appears complete. Joe.
Janice, thank you so much. Turning now to Milan Cortina, where Team USA is looking for more Olympics hardware. The women's hockey team will be skating in the gold medal game against Canada later today. They have quite simply cruised to the finals, outscoring their opponents 11-0 in these knockout rounds. Now hockey fans are wondering if the gold medal game on the men's side will be a carbon copy. NBC News international correspondent Claudio Lavanga is in Milan with more on what's happening today. Claudio, let's start with the women's team. They have been nothing short of dominant throughout these Olympics. Today they have a chance to avenge their loss in the gold medal game to Canada in the Beijing Olympics 4 years ago. We know the U.S. handily beat Canada last week, so what should we expect this time around?
Hey, Joe. Well, not only the women's ice hockey team won every match in this tournament throughout the Olympics here, they also made the most dominant run in the history of the Olympics since women's ice hockey has been played in the Olympics. And as you reminded, last week, this is not the first time U.S. and Canada meet. Last week, the U.S. beat Canada 5-0. But since then, things have changed. Of course, Canada built up confidence, and also that back then the captain of Canada was not playing, Marie-Philippe Poulin, and because she was injured, and now of course she's back in the game, which will make today's game even more interesting. It is the dream final everybody was waiting for, and we'll have to wait for 1:10 p.m. Eastern to watch it, Joe.
Yeah, no surprise that this is the final, and it will be interesting to see with Canada's captain back in play what kind of difference that makes. Let's talk about the men. Team USA now 1 win away from playing for the gold medal. That's thanks to some overtime heroics in their quarterfinals game against Sweden. I had maybe 2 or 3 heart attacks watching this one yesterday. Give us a recap, Claudio.
Yeah. Well, you probably weren't the only one. We knew that this was going to be a tough game, Sweden being the only team outside of the U.S. and Canada to have all NHL players in the team. And, of course, there were many team players playing against each other. It was tougher than expected with Sweden scoring tying with the U.S. literally less than 2 minutes before regulation, and then we had to get into overtime. Fans were holding their breath until, of course, Quinn Hughes scored that winning goal. After the race, Quinn Hughes told NBC, oh, well, that was such a relief. Well, that probably is the understatement of the Winter Olympics, because that was a relief for him, but also for the countless of fans like yourself who are having a few heart attacks.
A few heart attacks, yeah. Quinn Hughes putting it mildly right there. It's incredible for those who haven't seen it. When you're in overtime, it's 3-on-3. So the ice feels totally open, very stressful to watch, but good to see Team USA pull it out in the end. All right, let's talk about the fact that we've got now 4 seeds still in contention for the men's hockey gold. It's not going to be easy for either Canada, which, by the way, also barely won in overtime yesterday. They got to face Finland now. Team USA, do we think we'll have a USA-Canada final? How tough could it be for both those teams to get there?
Well, tomorrow, the USA plays Slovakia, while Canada plays Finland. You're right about yesterday's game. Also, that was a nail-biter, with Canada having to score in overtime also against Czechia, which at some point was, looking like it was on its way to win it. So we'll have to wait until tomorrow. But of course, everybody's dream is that the U.S. and Canada will meet in the final on Sunday, just as the women's are doing later today, John.
Yeah, that's the hope. But I think yesterday, if we learned anything, it's that both teams are beatable. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. They're going to have to play at their absolute best. All right, Claudio Lavanga in Milan, thank you as always. Coming up, reversing course, Moderna's new flu vaccine now going under review by the FDA after the agency initially rejected it. Our Dr. John Torres is here with what you need to know. That's coming up next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. The Food and Drug Administration is reversing course just 1 week after a surprise decision to reject Moderna's application for its new mRNA flu vaccine. The agency says it has now agreed to review the shot after Moderna made some modifications. The company is seeking fast-track approval on the vaccine for older adults, and the FDA is expected to make a decision in August. For more on this, I'm joined now by NBC News medical contributor Dr. John Torres. Dr. John, good to have you with us. So I guess, what are the changes that Moderna made here to try and persuade the FDA to revisit this?
And kind of putting it through the timeline, Moderna developed this mRNA flu vaccine. They went to the FDA and they said, here's the trial we want to do, 50 and above. We want to try it against what we now have for regular flu shots to make sure it's as safe and as effective, if not more effective. And so that regular flu shots is what they hung up on. When they went back to the FDA saying, okay, we did the trial the way you asked us to do the trial or the way you approved it, the FDA said, no, you need to do it on regular flu shots for 50 to 64-year-olds, but 65 and above should be the double dose higher flu shots. And Moderna said, that's not what we originally agreed on. And so FDA said no. Well, then they went back and they reapplied things, and Moderna went back to the FDA and said, okay, how about we do this? 50 to 64 regular flu shot, 65 and above regular flu shot, but after it gets approved, we'll do more studies to make sure that it works against the double dose flu shot again. And FDA said that's the one we'll look at.
Okay, so we remember hearing so much about mRNA when we were developing the COVID vaccine so quickly and how important that was. So when it comes to the flu vaccine, what's the difference between the mRNA one and the standard one that we've had for so long?
The biggest difference, and we're going to find out through this, the studies showing that it's just as effective, it's just as safe, but the biggest difference is with the mRNA flu shot, they can change the strain very quickly. Flu shots originally, they were cultivated in hen eggs, chicken eggs. That takes 6 to 8 months to do. Then they went to cell-based back in about 2007. That takes months to do as well. With the mRNA one, if you remember during COVID, their claim to fame is they can switch the strain in weeks because it's just genetic, just reprogramming the genetics in the mRNA shot. So again, it's one of those things that can be changed very quickly. And we found out this flu season, that strain changed on us very rapidly. And so it wasn't quite as effective.
If this is approved, who would be eligible for it?
So if this is approved right now, it's going to be 50 and above. And the reason they did that is because they wanted to focus on those who are more at risk for flu and flu complications.
So I think the FDA expected to make its final decision by August 5th. How long do reviews like this usually take? Is it possible that the shot could be available to those people by the end of the year?
That's the hope, that it will be available. Usually it takes about 6 months. We're in February, so August is the perfect timeline. But you have to remember, they are looking at the application, not necessarily approving the application. So we have to see what they do.
All right. I want to ask you about a separate, totally unrelated thing yesterday. The current NIH director, that's the National Institutes of Health, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, confirmed he's going to take over as acting director of the CDC, that's the Centers for Disease Control. This is sort of the latest transition in a months-long series of leadership shakeups at all these federal agencies. We've been talking about how many of them have vacancies right now. Help people understand, how big these two jobs are and how big these agencies are.
Well, a couple things. One, these two jobs are ginormous. They are huge jobs because the NIH handles all the research for medicines, vaccines, any biologicals type things. And so that is a research position. The CDC is a public health position, and it is the public health control for our country. If you remember during the pandemic, they were the ones coming out with all the information and decisions. And so you now have one person that is heading both research and public health. Can't do two things at the same time. They're completely different things you're doing. And so that's a concern. What's going to happen with the CDC? What's going to happen with NIH if only one person's in charge? And so the thinking is hopefully it's very temporary. They'll get somebody else in there. It requires Senate confirmation, so we'll see what that happens there.
All right. Dr. Torres, lots to cover this morning. Thank you so much. Coming up on Morning News Now, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg under fire in court over his platform's impacts on children.
All these kids should be graduating and getting married, and they fell into the trap of a design product that killed them.
When we come back, the landmark lawsuit now underway, how the outcome could change what kids see when they scroll. Welcome Welcome back. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg took the stand yesterday in a closely watched trial over social media's impact on kids. Under intense questioning, Zuckerberg denied claims that Instagram intentionally targeted underage users or that it designed features to be addictive. And that led to some combative moments in court. It's the first time Zuckerberg has personally testified before a jury on questions surrounding child safety. Meta and Google, owned YouTube, are the last remaining defendants in this case. It's the first in a growing wave of lawsuits focused on the link between social media use and children's mental health. Both those companies deny the allegations. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett has the latest from the courtroom.
Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg arriving at a Los Angeles courthouse to a barrage of cameras and grieving parents from around the country.
I want accountability.
Parents who say the social media empire Zuckerberg built is purposely addictive and dangerous for kids.
The intention of the company was to prey on teens, exploit them so they can make greater profits.
The tech giant and Facebook founder combative at times on the stand, dismissing the idea that his main goal was to maximize the time teens spent on Instagram, saying that's not how we run the company now. Zuckerberg repeatedly confronted with company presentations and internal documents suggesting he's known for more than a decade about the popularity of the app among young children. One report from 2015 estimating that over 4 million Instagram users were under 13, while the Meta boss emphasized safety features in place now, like age verification. Meta, which owns Instagram, has denied any blame for the harm that's been alleged by the now 20-year-old woman at the center of this landmark trial, who says she developed depression and anxiety from getting hooked on Instagram as a young kid. And she's not the only one. More than 1,500 lawsuits with similar claims remain pending, like Lori Schatz, whose daughter Annalie died by suicide at 18.
All these kids that should be graduating and getting married, and they fell into the trap of a design product that killed them.
Laura Jarrett, NBC News.
For more on the trial, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Danny, good morning. So a Meta spokesperson declined to comment on Zuckerberg's testimony, instead repeated the company's public statement on the case, saying in part, quote, "The evidence will show she, the plaintiff, faced many significant, difficult challenges well before she ever used social media." So with that in mind, what stood out to you about Zuckerberg's testimony?
Well, not that, and because that, what you just read, is the element of causation that Facebook and the other companies are going to try and demonstrate. But Zuckerberg and the CEOs are not the vehicle for that kind of testimony. You can imagine how bad that would look. First of all, they wouldn't have any qualifications to testify about the causation of mental illness. But secondly, it would be a bad look for defendants if they started opining on the stand that, hey, this plaintiff already had problems. So you are likely to see that through expert testimony later. But as for Zuckerberg's testimony, on the one hand, probably the biggest point the plaintiff scored was the point that when Zuckerberg tried to testify that, look, we don't shoot for time engagement goals, because everybody knows that the whole point of social media is to keep scrolling to infinity. That's how they make money. But on the other hand, Zuckerberg did reasonably okay on issues of, say, the work they've done to try and keep under 13-year-olds off their product.
You know, for the plaintiff, the core argument is that social media should be treated like a product and held to certain liability standards. Do they have to prove it was entirely responsible for a young person's mental health struggles, or just a contributing factor?
The magic words are a substantial factor, and causation is so complicated that you can imagine a jury really struggling with it. But if in the end they can prove that this was a substantial factor in the plaintiff's harm, then even if there are other factors that are not as significant, then you can still hold the plaintiff liable. But look for the defense to focus on pre-existing conditions, other causative factors, especially in the world of mental health, when arguably we haven't really fully mapped out the illnesses of mental health and the causation of it, the way we have, for example, lung cancer when it comes to smoking. So without the direct scientific causation that the plaintiff needs, the defense here has an opportunity to make this case about causation. And if the defendants didn't cause the plaintiff's injuries, arguably, they can even be a little negligent. They can even have done something wrong, because if you haven't caused the plaintiff's injuries, you cannot be liable for them.
TikTok and Snap, they were also originally named as defendants. They settled before the trial. Both companies did not admit to any wrongdoing or any liability. Meta did not settle, knowing this moment would come, that its CEO would have to take the stand. Does that suggest the company really believes it has a strong defense?
The decision to settle or not settle, especially in a case of this magnitude, really comes down to a business decision. The reality is that it has nothing to do with whether the companies do or don't think they did something wrong. It is purely a dollars and cents decision. Do you spend the money to go to trial and risk all of your dark secrets coming out in discovery and on the witness stand, and then roll the dice again at the end for a possible verdict against you? Or do you manage your risk, go to the plaintiffs, and settle for an undisclosed amount, admit no responsibility? In a way, the decision is not legal at all. It's purely business. It's purely negotiation. It's more like poker than it is ultimately a legal choice.
Zuckerberg did testify in front of grieving families here. What kind of impact can that have on a jury? I mean, just talk about how much the courtroom atmosphere matters.
Well, the plaintiff already had an advantage because Zuckerberg is one of the wealthiest persons on the planet. So that is a good thing to have him testifying to a jury. And he even admitted on the stand himself, he's notoriously not good with communication. And he's had to be coached up a lot. And by the way, he was confronted with internal communication showing that he's somebody who needs a lot of coaching when it comes to media appearances. So the plaintiff was probably salivating and hoping they might get a few really good moments with Zuckerberg, not based on the substance, but just based on the fact that they could villainize him in front of this jury. And make no mistake about it, I mean, this is a jury of regular lay folks. They may not understand complex things like algorithms, but they may be better able to understand very wealthy, rich guy getting richer by the day, and these victims, like the plaintiff, who have suffered adverse health consequences as a result of what the plaintiff says these companies did.
Danny, YouTube's CEO was scheduled to testify this week. His name's been removed from the witness list very quickly. Is that normal?
Oh, during trial, you make a lot of by-the-moment decisions, and it could be for any number of reasons. Maybe the party who was going to call him thought, look, this might be cumulative testimony. It might be there might be something in there that could hurt us, or really more likely, they already got exactly what they wanted from another witness, and they just don't want to muddy up the waters by calling another witness. Trial choices change by the minute, by the day, and it can be chaos. So you have to manage your risk and make the best choice you can.
All right, Danny, thank you so much. Entertainment giant Live Nation is facing another legal setback this morning. NBC News business and economy reporter Allie Canal has that and some other financial headlines with your Money Minute. Allie, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. Yeah, interesting development here. Live Nation just lost part of its bid to toss out the Justice Department's antitrust case that clears the way for a March 2nd trial. Now, a federal judge said a jury can decide whether Live Nation illegally controls concert ticketing through Ticketmaster, but did throw out claims that it dominates the concert promotion business or drives up prices for fans. In response to the ruling, Live Nation told Bloomberg it doesn't see a basis for breaking up the company. NBC News has reached out for comment. And from concerts to commerce, eBay is buying Gen Z favorite Depop for about $1.2 billion, acquiring it from Etsy. Now, eBay says the secondhand fashion platform, where 90% of buyers are under the age of 34, helps it win over younger shoppers in a crowded e-commerce market. Now, the deal comes as eBay also reported stronger than expected earnings. And travel demand, well, apparently it's still going strong. Bookings Holdings, the parent company of Booking.com and Priceline, posted double-digit revenue growth as room nights and bookings jumped in the fourth quarter. The company also raised its outlook for 2026, signaling that consumers are still prioritizing travel despite broader economic uncertainty. And Joe, with all this winter weather we've been having, I get that. I'm trying to even look
we
into
want to get away.
quick weekend trips to Florida, somewhere warm. Hopefully soon the weather starts to warm up.
Seeking the sun. All right,
yes.
Allie, thank you so much. Coming up, a golden finish for Team USA's Michaela Schifrin, getting to the top of the podium for the first time in 8 years. When we come back, we're going to be joined by the skiing star herself next on Morning News Now. We're back now with the latest from the Milan Cortina Winter Olympics. We've got an impressive bronze medal win yesterday for 22-year-old snowboarder Jake Cantor. He was only given a 20% chance to live after a horrific accident a while back. Later today, we've got the free skate for women's figure skating. Alyssa Liu in third place following Tuesday's short program. She's hoping to become the first American woman to earn a medal in the women's individual competition in 20 years. For more, let's bring in NBC News correspondent Jay Gray in Milan, joining us with the latest. Jay, first of all, before we get to the highlights, we want to ask you about that jacket, because you always score some of the best Olympic swag.
Joe, you're too kind. Yeah, this Team USA's jacket, one of many that the athletes are issued. This one, Joe, giving me kind of NASCAR joins Winter Olympic vibes. It's branded everywhere, sleeves as well, Team USA on the back. And if we stick with that racing theme, it's really evident at this point that the Americans aren't taking their foot off the gas as we get into the final days of these Winter Games.
Yeah, green is for go right now. So let's talk about a big win on the slopes for Jake Cantor. Bronze in snowboard slope style yesterday. Tell us more about just why, beyond just winning a medal at the Olympics, why this is such a huge accomplishment for him.
Just amazing to see. I mean, this is a guy who, as you said, wasn't supposed to be here. A 20% chance of living at one point. He had a horrible training accident on a trampoline. Another athlete drifting. They collided. He cracked his skull, had brain bleeding. A year later, as a result of all of this, he had some spinal fluid leak. He ultimately had to be placed in a medically induced coma by his doctors. He came out of that. He rebuilt himself and got to these games, and it was so amazing, Joe. I hope you've seen it. If you haven't, go watch this. His reaction when he learned that he had made the podium is I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. It's priceless. And to see him make it all the way back, that's a real Olympic story. That's what these games are all about.
That is the definition of a comeback right there. All right, Jay, we know how much you love curling, but it was a disappointing day for both the men's and the women's teams, both losing their matchups to Great Britain. So what does that mean for Team USA?
Yeah, and you know, let's start with the men. Yeah, a tough go. They lost Great Britain. And so now the U.S. needs a Norway loss. I'm sorry. That's the men. They need a Norway loss versus Canada and an Italy loss versus Switzerland to have any chance of advancing. There's a lot of, you know, this curling thing has so many different arms and levels, but for the men, just a really tough go. They need some help, but they can have some help. Let's not give up on them, Joe. And the women's side, they've got to struggle as well. They've got a better chance than the men of getting in here, but it's still going to be a tough go. Either way, the curlers that have been here have really shown themselves well in this tournament.
We need flow charts, Jay. We need flow charts. Okay, here's what figure skating is much more straightforward. So let's just go with that. Yeah. Alyssa Liu looking to make the podium. As we've said, first time a woman single individual competition from Team USA would medal in 20 years. How does she look going into today's competition?
Look, she seems very calm. She was great on the ice. She seems at peace and good with all of this. You know, she went through some struggles with the sport when she was 16, retiring for a bit, came back, though, and won the Worlds. And so we go into the free skate, the finals here, and you get a chance to score a little higher in this free skate. So she's in third right now. She's got a great chance to make the podium. Would be great for Team USA.
And real quick here, let's finish with that impressive gold from Michaela Schifrin. She's standing by. We're about to talk with her. But what's the highlight from yesterday's slalom?
The highlight is to see one of the best do her best on the mountain. She came back in the final run. She was first after the first run, came back and was lightning fast, really leaving no doubt. She won by well over a second, which is a lifetime in that sport. She is the epitome of an athlete who never gives up, came back, got back to the top of the podium. Now 3 career gold medals. She has as many as anybody in the Winter Games for Team USA. She is the best. Tell her I said, well done, Michaela.
I think she can hear you right now. Jay Gray, thank you so much. Appreciate it. As we just said, Michaela Shiffrin back at the top of the Alpine podium after that 8-year drought. In her last event yesterday in Cortina, Shiffrin won gold in the women's slalom, rewriting the history books in the process. She won, as he said, by 1.5 seconds, the largest margin of victory in any Olympic alpine event skiing since 1998. She's also the first American alpine skier to ever win 3 Olympic gold medals. Let's stop talking about it. Let's talk right to her. The superstar herself, Michaela Shiffrin, joins us this morning. Michaela, good morning. Congrats on another gold, your 4th Olympic medal in your skiing career. Walk us through it. What went through your mind in that last run as you crossed the finish line?
Oh, good morning. What an intro. When I crossed the finish line, I think it was a really culmination of a lot of work, and you know, I know you've heard that before, and it's maybe cliche to say, but it really is. Oops-a-daisy. You can probably hear that. Just give it a hot second. It really was the culmination of a lot of work from my team and so much support from so many people, both here in Cortina and those who have been traveling with me and my staff and coaches and everybody who's been there. You know, my mom, who's one of my coaches, and my family and my brother and Christy from afar, who are expecting their first baby pretty soon. And there's so much in that moment. There's so much built into it, and you can't possibly process it all in the blink of an eye. So I was just trying to take a moment and think, you know, I did exactly what I came to do. I showed up for the skiing. I came here for the skiing and to do my best skiing that I had the capability of, and to execute that twice throughout, you know, an entire day. I woke up at 1:30 a.m. and it wasn't for any reason, adrenaline, I suppose, but I wasn't particularly nervous. I just was sort of awake from 1:30 until the time we raced, and to compose your nerves and your energy and your excitement, all so that you have 47 seconds in the morning and 47 seconds in the afternoon to bring all of that energy together is it's complicated, and I'm always surprised when I manage to do it, and yesterday was no exception. But I really appreciated that moment.
I can only imagine. And I know in that moment you say you were thinking of your father who had passed away a few years ago. You stopped to think about him, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, before the second run, I had a moment. You know, the moments of waiting are particularly challenging to manage, and there's a lot of waiting on race day. And I was sort of trying to control myself, and one of the ways that I do that is to actually let my mind drift elsewhere. You know, I sort of let myself dream, and I let myself think of other things, and I listen to music, and just sort of try to not force myself to be too focused on the task at hand just yet, because I don't need that much time to actually get into that focus zone. So my mind was drifting, you know, to my family and to the support system, and you know, to the I was in a really good position for the second run, so to the potential of what the day could be, and I almost didn't want to let myself dream, like not dare to dream about it, because it's all in the execution. So then I started thinking of my dad, and I thought about the way he speaks and the way he would talk to me about these things. You know, it's incredible, and you want to wear it and you want to show it off, but you know, he'd make these silly comments like, who cares about that? Like, throw it away. And it's all in the skiing. And I was just trying to have a moment to communicate with him, and honestly, like with my whole team, who they don't get to have that moment crossing the finish line. And if I could if I could like telepathically connect that to you guys and to the people, anybody who might be watching this, like to imagine yourself crossing a finish line of the Olympics, and that the whole finish area spans out ahead of you, and the people are cheering, and you can't find the scoreboard, and you know, and you get to have maybe 10 seconds to process what's happening. And in those 10 seconds, I chose to try to connect with the people who have helped me, and you know, my support system, and definitely with my dad.
Well, we can feel it telepathically and beyond, and we are so happy for you that this dream has come true. Michaela Schifrin, thank you so much. Congrats again on your gold medal.
Thank you.
All right, viewers, you can catch all of the best Olympic action and excitement on Prime Time in Milan, hosted by Mike Tirico, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern on NBC and streaming on Peacock. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now, but don't go anywhere. The news continues right now. Family of the late Virginia Roberts Giuffre is welcoming the arrest of Andrew. NBC News Now anchor Hallie Jackson has more on what they're saying.
Hey there, good morning to you. This arrest of Andrew, of course, is a separate matter than the sex assault allegations against him, which he has long denied, by Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who died by suicide last year. But this morning we are hearing from Giuffre's family saying, at last. They say their broken hearts have been lifted at the news that no one is above the law, not even royalty. They go on to say on behalf of their sister, they extend their gratitude to the Thames Valley Police for the investigation and arrest. And they say Andrew was never a prince. For survivors everywhere, Virginia did this for you. Now, the attention on Andrew had intensified even before the release of the DOJ Epstein documents, after Giuffre released her posthumous memoir in which she wrote that Andrew believed having sex with her was his birthright. In 2022, the two settled a civil sex abuse lawsuit out of court. In a statement without admitting wrongdoing, Andrew said he regrets his association with Epstein and never intended to malign Giuffre's character. Back to you.
All right, Hallie, thank you. In Arizona, the search for Nancy Guthrie continues this morning. It is now 19 days since our NBC News colleague Savannah Guthrie's mom was taken from her home. The Pima County Sheriff says his investigators are working a number of leads, including trying to identify the source of unknown DNA that was discovered at Nancy's house. The sheriff has not said specifically where it was found, but that he believes the DNA could belong to the suspect who is behind Nancy's disappearance. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz joins us from Tucson with the latest. Liz, good morning.
Well, hey there, good morning. The sheriff says that DNA found at the home is a mixture DNA, which experts say can take a long time to process, but is often found at violent crime scenes. Experts also say that even if it does take weeks to identify, this could be the breakthrough that investigators so desperately need.
This morning, despite another unsuccessful day searching for Nancy Guthrie, experts believe it's only a matter of time before the DNA authorities found on her property can be traced to a specific individual.
How hopeful are you?
I am extremely hopeful. I am so happy to hear that the sheriff confirmed that they did find an unknown person's DNA at the crime scene. That is fantastic.
To identify who that DNA belongs to, investigators are now turning to genetic genealogy, which in recent years has successfully identified other high-profile criminals like the Golden State Killer and University of Idaho murderer Brian Kohberger.
If I was the kidnapper, I would be extremely concerned right now, because using investigative genetic genealogy, he will be identified.
But how long it could take depends in part on how long a person's family has been in this country, according to DNA expert Cece Moore.
If they have deep roots in the United States, it could be minutes, it could be a few hours. But if it's somebody who doesn't have connections to the U.S. in their tree in more recent generations, then it could take much longer.
Investigators are also canvassing gun stores across Tucson in hopes of identifying the armed suspect who had an unusual holster. Owners of two different gun shops tell us investigators came to their stores with a list of names and photos. Two officials familiar with the matter tell NBC News that since Nancy went missing, law enforcement has been in touch with officials on both sides of the border. While the sheriff says it's a possibility, he says there's no evidence she was taken to Mexico. We're also learning more about a man briefly detained Friday night during a search of his home. A Tucson attorney says his client, 37-year-old Luke Daly, has no link to Nancy Guthrie, writing both Mr. Daly and his mother are hopeful that Nancy will be returned to her family unharmed. Outside Nancy's home, the display of yellow flowers and signs continues to grow. Marcia Christensen drove 2 hours to show her support in person.
I can't imagine losing a mother and not knowing where she is.
And as for how genetic genealogy works, investigators are not allowed to use those big, well-known companies like Ancestry.com or 23andMe, but they can use publicly available DNA databanks. So investigators will put the DNA from the home into those and essentially try to build out a family tree to potentially trace back to a possible suspect. Back to you.
All right, Liz, thank you so much. Former Secret Service agent, NBC News law enforcement analyst Evie Pomporis is here to help us dig deeper into some of the details we just heard. Let's talk about the DNA here. How big of a deal is this, and what do we make about the fact that it's being described as a mixture?
So mixture means when DNA gets mixed in with somebody else's DNA. It's common actually in sexual assault cases when the DNA is mixed. So it can be a good thing if, and we don't know this, if it's maybe mixed in with Nancy's DNA, right? So then that would lead you to believe that the two individuals were connected. It can also happen if you happen to just touch somebody else's DNA and then your DNA gets mixed in there. So it could be a positive thing because it could directly connect us to Nancy.
Let's talk more about genetic genealogy here. So right now, basically, authorities can access these public databases, which a lot of people did back in the day sort of choose to have after they do a 23andMe or something, put into a public database, see if they're related to someone or any connections they have out there. But in order to get into the private databases, there does need to be a warrant here. How much could that slow down the investigation?
So with the warrant, this is not uncommon. A lot of private companies, tech, everybody, because they collect all this information from us, from the public, they're very kind of careful when they give information to law enforcement, because then the public's going to say, hey, I don't want to use your databases or your products because you're going to hand me over to law enforcement. And so this is why they're saying we want a court order. We want a subpoena. So it's not uncommon. So yes, from an investigative perspective, sometimes it was a pain, even for me. I'm like, why can't you just help me? I'm trying to do good. But from their perspective, they're like, hey, we have to protect people's privacy. Now, hopefully you can get it and they can speed up the process and hand that over. But private companies like a 23andMe, they will do that. There's some companies that are very happy to here, take it. And then some other companies, they're just much more conservative in what they share with the public, with law enforcement.
Genetic genealogy has been such a game changer. I was on the West Coast. I covered the Golden State Killer, which was really the first big time we saw this used to solve a long, cold case, high profile. Do you think this is going to be perhaps the key development here? Are there other pieces of evidence you're looking at as well?
It's so interesting that you bring up the Golden State Killer, because yesterday one of my contacts, Anne-Marie Schubert, who was the lead DA on that case.
Yes.
And we were speaking about, this case in DNA, and she said that was like the first major breakthrough. What was that? 4 decades where they were trying to catch him, and DNA is what helped. DNA is huge when it comes to solving cases, cold cases, because you can take that match and you're looking for a couple of things. One is the person I'm looking for in the system. The other thing, though, I can tell you is relatives, family members. So I can they'll take this genealogy information. Let's say I don't have a direct match, but I can start to build a family tree. And now based on that family tree, I could figure out parents, uncles, cousins, relatives. And at that point now, I decide from an investigative perspective, do I want to go speak to them? I'm not sure. Do I want to go monitor them and see what's going on? Can I get subpoenas to look into their phones and see if they've connected with the suspect? So that's what it can help yield you. So that's why it's really, really great. So it's not just, I got my guy. It's, well, I have somebody here who has similar DNA, and that person could be a cousin or a parent or a great-grandparent. And now I can start to build this family tree that can lead me to you.
Is there anything else besides the DNA that you're looking at is still could be key old-fashioned detective work into solving this?
Absolutely. The fact that they're looking at that gun holster, I have to tell you, the first day that we were covering this and I saw that holster in my head, I was like, what kind of holster is that? I had never seen that before. And it just automatically led me to believe that this isn't a person who's in law enforcement, has any training, has any military experience. So in my head, you start to eliminate the probabilities. And going to the stores, because it is a unique holster, asking around, hey, did you make this holster? Did you have sales in this holster? Where did this holster go out? In the U.S. Secret Service, we did this actually with written letters. When people would write threats into the president, we had databases of ink where we could talk to the companies and say, hey, this ink where did you make this? Where did you manufacture it? Where did you sell it? And they would give you geographic locations. Oh, we sold it in this area, to this store, to this store, to this store. And then you go to those stores and they're like, oh, here's who bought this. Here's who bought these pens and when. So the traditional bootleg investigative stuff is absolutely key. You should be doing everything simultaneously. And look, it may not be one thing that's like, that's my person. It may be all these things, they call it circumstantial evidence, all these things together that you start to put together the pieces of the puzzle.
All right, Abby, good to have you with us. Thank you so much. Now to California's High Sierra Mountains, where the death toll continues to rise after an avalanche there earlier this week. The bodies of 8 backcountry skiers were found yesterday. Meanwhile, rescue teams are racing against the clock to try and find one person who's still missing. NBC News national correspondent Morgan Chesky is on the ground in California with the latest. Morgan, good morning.
Joe, good morning. And there was a real sense of hope when those 6 skiers were rescued overnight, but that hope was dashed when authorities confirmed that the bodies of 8 others had been recovered. Another at this hour still missing somewhere on that snowy mountain. And with even more snow coming down today, recovery efforts only getting that much harder.
This morning, a growing recovery mission to find a missing skier who is now presumed dead after a snowy mountainside gave way.
Medical avalanche, Castle Peak.
A group of 15 backcountry skiers, 4 guides and 11 guests caught in an avalanche Tuesday the size of a football field near Castle Peak just north of Lake Tahoe. The group, mostly women, were on the last day of a 3-day backcountry excursion and heading home when the fast-moving avalanche swept over them. 6 survivors, 2 women and 4 men, including a guide, sheltered in place, calling for help using emergency beacons and the iPhone SOS feature.
Someone saw the avalanche, yelled avalanche, and then it overtook them rather quickly.
Once the call went out, 2 teams of roughly 50 rescuers deployed. But brutal conditions on the mountain have been hampering the operation, taking first responders more than 6 hours to reach survivors in an area where the danger of another avalanche remains high.
Lots of snow, gale force winds, making it impossible to see.
How would you describe the effort to save these folks?
It's a lot. I mean, this is a pretty significant snowstorm. You know, up at that elevation, they're looking at, upwards of 5-6 feet of snow. And so just to get through that snow with snow machines or on skis would be a big task.
The backcountry tour run by Blackbird Mountain Guides. Just days earlier, the company posting this video on Instagram with the caption, "Big storm incoming." The company says it's working in full coordination with authorities. The town known for its love of the outdoors and its mountains, now grieving.
We're a small community and we look out for each other. And this is devastating. It affects us all.
So many people here feeling this loss. We did learn that 48 hours prior to this avalanche, at least 3 feet of fresh snow had fallen in and around that Castle Peak area. There is an avalanche forecast center here that had issued avalanche watches and warnings. Still unknown, though, Joe, to what degree of awareness this professional guide service had when they were leading this group of 11 skiers back on their final day of this fateful excursion. Joe.
All right, Morgan, thank you. Moving now to Oklahoma, where warm, dry, and windy weather is fueling a number of wildfires. The flames are forcing authorities to urge a third of the residents of Woodward to evacuate. That's a small city located about 140 miles northwest of Oklahoma City. The director of emergency management for Woodward says the fire is approaching its, quote, worst case scenario. NBC News correspondent Ryan Chandler joins us now from Texas County, Oklahoma, with more. Ryan, good morning. We know Oklahoma's Governor Kevin Stitt declared a state of emergency in 3 counties yesterday. What are the resources that are being deployed to help fight these fires?
Well, it's really a regional-wide effort, pooling resources between Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, understanding that fires like this don't respect state lines or borders. I'll tell you, in our hotel last night, we saw a big group of firefighters from the Kansas National Guard show up to help the fires all across this region. We do know this morning that the evacuation centers for people across the state of Oklahoma are closed, but they remain ready to reopen at a moment's notice if more fires do break out. One of the greatest needs right now, and what we've seen from nonprofits around the state, is resources for farmers who lose their cattle, pooling money to help those. That's one of the biggest risks right now. We haven't seen many threats to human life, fortunately, thanks to some real heroic efforts from firefighters. But when these fires sweep through isolated areas, they often present a huge risk to livestock, which could cost farmers a whole lot of money, Joe.
How much are these fires contained, if at all, and some of the nearby communities, how are they responding to help out?
So across the state of Oklahoma, there's more than 300,000 acres burning right now. Almost all of that is at the Ranger Road fire, which is only 15% contained. 283,000 acres at last count. That's an area more than 300 times larger than Central Park. Only 15% of it under control right now, so that will be the #1 priority for firefighters today.
Are there any injuries so far from the fire?
So far, 4 firefighters were reported injured yesterday when their truck rolled over at a certain operation. No injuries to citizens in their homes from these fires, and no deaths reported yet, Joe.
All right. Ryan Chandler reporting from Oklahoma. Ryan, thank you so much. The fire danger is stretching into today while the rain is not letting up on the West Coast. Meteorologist Melissa McGee has your Morning News Now weather. Melissa, good morning.
And good morning, everyone. We remain unsettled out across the West Coast. New rounds of rain and heavy snow will slam California. Avalanche risk renewed across the Sierra Mountains, so we're watching that really closely. The storm system quickly races out across areas in the Rockies, and that snow will spread into this region as well tomorrow. So slick travel along I-70 and I-25. Red flag warnings are in effect for the southern plains. 9 million are at risk. Critical fire weather conditions, gusty winds, very dry air at the surface. It will elevate our fire threat here. Out across the upper Midwest, the snow and the showers will continue right across the mid-Atlantic region. Then severe showers are likely as we head across Illinois and Ohio today, with the possibility of a tornado or two. Damaging winds and hail certainly can't be ruled out either. Then tomorrow, moderate to heavy snow lifts into New England. In terms of the snowfall forecast, overall for New England, about 2 to 4 inches of snowfall across the area, but across the higher terrain, we could find anywhere from 6 to 8 inches of snow. Watching the coast very closely, the potential for a big winter storm early next week. Now, the track of this area of low pressure will determine the impact. So as we head into our Monday, the trend has been that this storm stays offshore. But of course, there's still a chance that this is a complete miss. So we'll keep you posted with that. That warmth is eroding. You could see out across the West Coast, Denver, 39 degrees. The warmth continues today in Dallas, 78 and 80 degrees in New Orleans. Now, as we head out on our Friday, it's still nice in Atlanta. Temperature is 77, but cold in Rapid City and at 29 degrees. As we head into early next week across much of the Ohio Valley, the Midwest and the Northeast, these temperatures start to cool down. 41 for Cleveland, but by Monday, we're down at 32 at the freezing mark. Richmond, Virginia, 62 degrees on your Saturday, but back to work on Monday, a high temperature of just 46. And in Boston, 35 degrees for the start of your weekend, and we'll hang out in the 30s even as we get into next week. That's a look at your national weather. Now back to you.
All right, Melissa, thank you. Much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including the gold medal brawl about to play out mere hours from now when the women Warriors of Team USA Hockey face off against their heated Canadian rivals for global glory. First, after the break, a massive military show of force in the Middle East as the Trump administration bulks up its presence around Iran. More on that next. Welcome back. The U.S. is increasing its military presence in the Middle East this morning. According to U.S. officials and also information available from public tracking, the Defense Department is sending a large amount of additional military hardware to the region in preparation for a possible military strike on Iran. This comes as the U.S. and Iran are holding ongoing diplomatic talks in Geneva, hoping to avoid conflict. NBC News reporter Matt Bodner is in London with the latest on this. Matt, good morning. So what weapons are being sent to the Middle East and what is already there?
Morning, Joe. Well, there's quite a lot en route to the Middle East right now. That's at least according to flight data tracking services, also some U.S. officials. Basically, we're seeing large numbers of U.S. fighter jets redeploying to bases in the region. There's additional warships, air defenses, and submarines also moving in that direction now, again, according to U.S. officials. One of those warships is the carrier USS Gerald R. Ford. Officials say she's now making a way across the Atlantic to the Med. Once there, the Ford will fall in with the USS Abraham Lincoln Strike Group, which is already in the region. U.S. officials also say that a nuclear submarine is already in the Mediterranean or somewhere around there. Overall, we are looking at the largest conglomeration of U.S. forces mustered in the region in the last 20 years or so. And this is a lot of travel for the Ford, by the way. It's already been on deployment for nearly 8 months. At the end of last year, it was diverted from a NATO tasking in the North Sea off to the Caribbean. There she took part in the capture of Venezuelan President Maduro last month and asked last Friday why a second carrier was now being sent to the Med. Trump said, quote, in case there's not a deal.
And in case there's not a deal, I guess that begs the question, do we have any idea what kind of action President Trump is considering against Iran or what the targets would be?
So that's still the big question here. Suffice it to say, though, the position of 2 U.S. carriers in strike range on Iran would conceivably allow the U.S. to conduct any number of types of strikes on targets within Iran without having to draw on aircraft stationed in neighboring states. Those aircraft, of course, moving there now. There are a bunch of nations in the area, such as the Arab Gulf states. They fear that Iran may retaliate against them if a strike is launched from their territories. So the 2 carriers allow the U.S. to sort of sidestep that if Trump chooses to move that way. Another question that remains unclear is whether or not the U.S. would conduct strikes alone. Would it be a joint operation with Israel? Is this just nuclear targets, or is this a broader operation aimed perhaps at regime change, which, of course, requires substantial?
Yeah, the goal, of course, is to avoid conflict. The U.S. and Iran are holding these ongoing talks in Geneva. Where do things stand with those negotiations?
Yeah, so while we're looking at all these military maneuvers, absolutely worth noting that the talk of potential strikes, it's following talks between the U.S. and Iranian delegations in Geneva on Tuesday. Iran, following those talks, said it had reached an understanding with the U.S. on sort of the main principles of an agreement. It did request another week or so to do more work on that. Meanwhile, yesterday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had this to say about it.
The president has always been very clear, though, with respect to Iran or any country around the world. Diplomacy is always his first option, and Iran would be very wise to make a deal with President Trump and with this administration.
So it may be, Joe, that the White House is making a show of moving forces around while engaging in negotiations with Iran to essentially raise the pressure on them to reach a deal. Back to you.
All right, Matt Bodner, thank you. It was a sudden death finish for the U.S. Olympic men's hockey team as they pulled off an overtime win against Sweden yesterday. And in speed skating, 2-time Olympic gold medalist Jordan Stolz is hoping to add a 3rd gold medal to his collection. He competes in the men's 1,500-meter competition later today. NBC News international correspondent Claudio Lavaga is in Milan, joins us with the latest from the Olympics. Claudio, good morning. It was most definitely a heart-stopping finish for the men's hockey team as they pulled off that dramatic overtime defeat against Sweden. Talk about that one and who they face next.
Hey, Joe. Well, it definitely was. After scoring the winning goal in overtime, Quinn Hughes told NBC News, well, that was such a relief, yeah, to him and to the countless of fans who were holding their breath after Sweden tied right literally a couple of minutes before regulation time. So there was a massive relief for everyone. And now tomorrow, the U.S. faces Slovakia. And before you ask whether that's a strong team, well, just consider this. Slovakia's game in the quarterfinals yesterday was the only one that did not finish in the that did not end in overtime. Slovakia destroyed Germany 6-2, so proved itself to be a real contender for a medal. While Canada, which also won in overtime yesterday, also another nail-biter against Czechia, while Canada faces in the semifinals Finland. And if it all goes the way we expect, well, then hopefully the big final on Sunday is going to be the U.S. versus Canada, Joe.
Imagine how close we came to having both the U.S. and Canada knocked out in the quarterfinals. Yeah. That would have been a major headline there. Right. Speaking of hockey, the women looking to win gold against Canada today. The first time they matched up last week, Team USA shut out the Canadians 5-0. What are the chances that happens again today?
Well, if you look at what happened since the start of the Olympics, the chances are high. As you said, the U.S. beat Canada 5-0. 5-0 last week. They had the most dominant run in Olympic history. They won every single game until now. But of course, the final is a final. Everything is reset, especially if you consider that one of the big differences between last week's game with Canada and tonight's final is that Canada's captain is back, Marie-Philippe Poulin. She was injured last week, and now she's back in the game, and of course, it's going to make that game even more interesting. And that takes place at 1:10 p.m. Eastern. We'll definitely be watching, Joe.
No kidding. A lot of folks will be watching that. A huge highlight for Team USA in these games has been speed skating phenom Jordan Stoltz. He's back on the ice. He's the youngest single-distance world champion in history. He's already got 2 golds. What can we expect today?
Well, not only he won 2 golds in the past 2 events, he broke the Olympic records in both cases, in the 500 and 1,000 meters. Now tonight's going to play. Later today he's going to run a race in the 1,500. Let's see if he wins gold and if he breaks another Olympic record. But if he does win gold, then he's going to become only the second U.S. athlete in Winter Olympics history to win 3 or more gold medals in the same event, Joe.
We'll see if he breaks any records and if he breaks out that fashionable headwear that he likes to wear. So many interesting hats.
Yeah.
Finally, let's talk about women's figure skating. Alyssa Liu hoping for a podium appearance after the free skate today. Remind us, Claudio, we keep talking about this, but when was the last time an American woman earned a medal in the individual figure skating competition?
Well, that was 20 years ago, Joe. And if you're looking at when it was the last time any U.S. athlete won a gold medal, that was 24 years ago. So a lot of hope now rests on Alyssa Liu, the only one of the 3 Blade Angels who went ranked to the top after the short program on Tuesday. She's 3rd on the table, so she's got a real shot at the medal. The other 2 Blade Angels, Isabel Levito is 8th, and Amber Glenn is 13. Well, she was skating on Like a Prayer, Madonna's Like a Prayer. It's going to take a lot more than a prayer, of course, for her to move up the ranks in that table. But hey, you know, we're talking about prayers, Madonna, so maybe it's going to be another Miracle on Ice, just a different kind.
Yeah, there you go. You never know. I mean, Madonna's supporting her, so you got to think that's going to help. All right, exactly. Claudio, thank you so much. You can catch all of the best Olympic action and excitement on Primetime in Milan, hosted by Mike Tirico, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern on NBC, also streaming on Peacock. Coming up, big tech back on trial this week. How Meta chief Mark Zuckerberg defended Instagram over some searing accusations that it's made to be addicting, all in a landmark legal battle that's got social media titans in the hot seat. That's next. We want to return to our top story. The family of the late Virginia Roberts Giuffre, one of Epstein's victims, is speaking out following the arrest of former Prince Andrew earlier this morning. They spoke with NBC News Now anchor Hallie Jackson hours after the news broke about what this means for them and their late sister. Here's some of what they had to say.
It feels like this surreal moment, a piece of justice that like Virginia has been fighting for this entire time. And I think we're just so proud. We're so proud. We're so freaking proud of our sister right now.
I mean, I think what Amanda said is perfect. I think it's a very proud moment for us. I think the first step here has been taken by the UK, which is amazing. I think there's so much more that needs to be done here. I'm hoping they conduct a full investigation and there's a conviction of some sort. I think, you know, the thing that keeps resonating in my head is when my sister, you know, she famously said, and I'm just going to paraphrase this now, but like, they know what happened. We know what happened, and only one of us is telling the truth, and we know that's us. I would say this is what we've been calling for the entire time. I mean, in the most recent interviews you've seen us do, I mean, one of the biggest things that we continue to state is that if they're capable of doing this most heinous crime out there, what else are they capable of doing? And so that's what we're seeing downstream here. And I hope that this is just the beginning, because I think there's a lot to be said. I think if you follow the money, you follow their position, you're going to start uncovering some really hard, dark truths very quickly.
Our thanks to Hallie Jackson for that interview. Now with a closer look at what's making news in the world of politics this morning. That includes the latest on Les Wexner's testimony regarding his appearance in the Epstein files. NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen joins us with more. John, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. As you mentioned, Les Wexner, the billionaire former CEO of Victoria's Secret, told lawmakers on Wednesday that he was, quote, conned by Jeffrey Epstein and did, quote, nothing wrong. Appearing over Zoom for a closed-door hearing, the 88-year-old Wexner denied allegations that he was actually Epstein's co-conspirator and said in a statement that was released to the media that he, quote, never witnessed nor had any knowledge of Epstein's criminal activity. But at least some members of the committee were not buying it. During a break in the deposition, Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia told reporters that Wexner was playing down his relationship with Epstein. Here's what Garcia said. There would be no Epstein Island. There would be no Epstein plane. There would be no money to traffic women and girls. Mr. Epstein would not be the wealthy man he was without the support of Les Wexner. Now, the Trump administration's latest round of musical chairs at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is ending with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, the director of National Institutes of Health. He's going to take on both jobs, at least for the time being. Bhattacharya, who confirmed to NBC News that he will assume the role of acting director of the CDC, is the third chief of the Atlanta-based agency since August. That's when Susan Menares was pushed out. She told Congress that Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. removed her for failing to rubber stamp his changes to vaccine policies. And finally, looking ahead to next week, at least a dozen Democratic lawmakers plan to boycott President Donald Trump's State of the Union address next Tuesday. Some of them will participate in a counter-programming rally on the National Mall called the People's State of the Union. The group includes Senators Chris Murphy, Chris Van Hollen, and Tina Smith, as well as Representatives Pramila Jayapal and Greg Casar. The speaker for the official Democratic response, that famous one you see after the State of the Union every year, has not yet been named by House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Back to you, Joe.
All right, John, thank you so much. A closely watched trial over social media's impact on kids resumes today, with several YouTube whistleblowers expected to testify. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg took the stand yesterday. Under intense questioning, Zuckerberg pushed back on claims that Instagram was intentionally designed to target underage users. Meta and Google-owned YouTube are the last remaining defendants in this case. Both companies deny the allegations. This is the first in a growing wave of lawsuits trying to link social media use to children's mental health. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett has the latest.
Hey there. The jury watching the tech CEO closely in this case as Zuckerberg tried to bat away claims his company has fallen short on safety and highlight the changes that have been made over time. The testimony turning contentious and combative at times, all with the knowledge that a loss here could mean paying billions in damages.
A critical moment for Meta boss and Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, taking the witness stand in a high-stakes trial as grieving parents who say they lost children to the dark side of social media came to face him head-on.
The intention of the company was to prey on teens, exploit them so they can make greater profits.
Zuckerberg pushing back, rejecting the suggestion that Instagram's main goal was to maximize the time kids spend on the app, saying that's not how we run the company now. Meta, which owns Instagram, has come under scrutiny for years when it comes to teen safety.
Your company and every social media company needs to do much more to protect children.
But Wednesday marked the first time Zuckerberg had to personally answer such questions about it in a courtroom, appearing frustrated at times when confronted with internal documents stretching back more than a decade.
They not only allowed those below 13, but that they went after those below 13.
Zuckerberg denying that assertion on the stand. Meanwhile, Instagram and YouTube, another defendant in this trial, have denied any blame for the harm alleged by the now 20-year-old plaintiff, who says she developed depression and anxiety from using social media. And she's not alone. More than 1,500 other families now have similar lawsuits pending, like Lori Schott, whose daughter Anna Lee died by suicide at 18.
It's all these kids that should be graduating and getting married, and they fell into the trap of a design product that killed them.
As for what happens next in this trial, we have learned that the CEO of YouTube is no longer expected to be called to testify. Remember, they're a defendant in this case, but the jury will hear from several internal company whistleblowers when court resumes later today. Back to you.
All right, Laura Jarrett, thank you so much. Coming up, we're going to head back to Milan Cortina, where American slopestyle phenom Jake Cantor just racked up a bronze medal for Team USA. His path to the podium as a talented 22-year-old has been anything but effortless. He joins us next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. More meta news this morning. It's looking like the tech giant might just wade into the smartwatch circle this year. NBC News business and economy reporter Allie Canal is here with your Money Minute. Allie, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. Yeah, they just might. Meta, of course, is the parent company of Instagram and Facebook. This smartwatch rumor has been circulating. According to the information, the company has revived its Malibu 2 project with a watch featuring health tracking and a built-in Meta AI assistant targeting a 2026 debut. Meta declined to comment on the report to NBC News. Meanwhile, the Super Bowl champions, the Seattle Seahawks, are officially up for sale. The Paul Allen estate has hired Allen & Company to explore a deal, and Bloomberg reports it could top the $6 billion Commanders sale, making it one of the biggest in NFL history. Now, league rules require any new owner to personally put up at least 30% of the purchase price. Translation, any new buyer will have to be pretty stinking rich. And then there's SeatGeek. It's tapping into Spotify, the ticketing company announcing a new integration that lets users buy concert tickets directly from an artist's Spotify page. For now, this is only at select venues where SeatGeek is the primary seller. The company hopes to reach Spotify's 750+ million users as rivals like Ticketmaster dominate much of the market. And remember, we have that Live Nation antitrust trial set for March 2nd, Live Nation being the parent company of Ticketmaster. So still a lot more to come with this concert ticketing battle in the future.
As for the Seahawks, you're saying I can't buy them.
I don't know. Maybe dig into the 401k a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work. Right.
I don't know who can at this point.
Someone
I guess
can,
maybe
yeah.
Zuckerberg or Elon Musk. I guess we'll see.
All right, Allie, thank you so much. Now for an Olympic-style tour, co-host city Cortina sits at the heart of the breathtaking Dolomites, where the view looks like a winter wonderland. Well, NBC News Now anchor Gotti Schwartz hit the slopes for a look at this hidden paradise of the Italian Alps, and he's taking us along for the ride.
Here, high above Cortina, the queen of the Dolomites, is the world's largest ski area. We are headed to the Dolomiti Super Ski and this place called Cinque Torre that we keep hearing about. Look at this. There they are. There are the 5 towers. And oh my gosh, the geology around here is incredible. All right, first run of the day. Let's go. Woo-hoo-hoo! Yeah! It is just miles and miles and miles of skiing. Middle of the day gondola, they pack them in pretty tight. Oh! Ah! Oh, oh! This ski lift is a 1, 2, 3, 4 horsepower ski lift. How do you say giddy up in Italian? Andiamo. Andiamo! In the United States, we ski from run to run, chairlift to chairlift. Here, they ski from town to town, village to village, mountain to mountain.
Along the way, we found something else that makes this place so magical. A vast network of mountain huts.
This is a refugio. This is the true meaning of a mountain refuge in the middle of nowhere. And then boom, this little winter oasis.
It's a perfect place for a lunchtime pit stop.
How was your lunch? Oh my God, I mean, I'm still working on it. Oh. This is Tamara. This is her family's hut, right? So people can go ski from place to place, and instead of using a car to get to a hotel, you're using your skis to get to different refugios.
Yes, you can sleep every night in a different hut. Very unique experience.
Wow.
And then we have on the terrace over there, the sauna.
Did you say sauna? Oh. Life does not get much better than this. Oh. Oh, wait, never mind. I was wrong. It did get better. Thank you so much. Cappuccino in a sauna on the top of a mountain. Salute.
Scotty Schwartz, NBC News.
All right, not a bad day's work. More morning news now after this. Stay with us. Finally this hour, Leonardo da Vinci is known all over the world for his creations on canvas and in clay. But these Olympic Games in Italy are bringing to light some of the master artist's hidden works. NBC's Mary Carrillo has the story.
From the internationally renowned The Last Supper of the 15th century to the blazing cauldrons of these Olympic Games, Leonardo da Vinci's strokes of genius sweep across his adopted city of Milan. Yet inside the massive Sforza castle, Leonardo's largest work stayed hidden for centuries, a dazzling tribute to the natural world he examined and admired. An unfinished mural of mulberry trees, its canopy transforming walls and ceiling into a magical arbor, brought back to life before our eyes.
We are restoring the Sala delle Asse, and for the first time it's possible to see the painting and the sketches made by Leonardo very, very close.
The wealthy and powerful Sforza family commissioned him in 1498. But when France invaded Milan a year later, da Vinci fled, his budding masterwork suspended in time. The room was plastered over and turned into military barracks.
Then the Spanish arrived here. They used the room as a stable.
Horse stables?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, Leonardo. The painstaking process of restoring his work will take another year and a half. But in honor of the Olympics and Paralympics, this work in progress is open to the public for the duration of the Games.
I feel like we are again the center of the world, as Milano was in the Renaissance. It's such an extraordinary moment for the city. This is our way to participate.
The climb up the scaffolding requires a safety helmet. And then I arrive.
Tommaso, we are so close.
Yeah, we're so close.
To Leonardo. I can't believe I'm this close to this. Tell me what they are doing here.
They're putting a Japanese paper on the painting. They're putting a special water that take the salt out of the painting to let the brightness of the color come out. Everyone, almost everyone, knows the Last Supper. I wouldn't say no one, but few people know the Sala delle Asse. So our mission, our cultural mission, is to let it be known all over the world.
I'm so glad I know it.
I'm so glad you're here.
Our thanks to Mary Carrillo for that story. You can catch all the best Olympic action and excitement on Primetime in Milan, hosted by Mike Tirico, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern on NBC and streaming on Peacock. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Stay with us. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.